What's going on, everybody? I'm Jiffy Nano, and welcome back to another Wonderlands build video, this time going over my Spellshot Brr-Zerker Frost Mage build. Now really quick before I show the skill trees, I'm stacking a lot of effects in this. Both my rings give me increased spell damage when my action skill is cooling down, along with my amulet, the Thurge, or the Urge, whatever it's called, which increases your spell damage by 30% when your action skill is cooling down. The damage output is significantly higher when you do this. This build will be very strong regardless of what rings and amulet you use. So with that out of the way, this skill trees. We are all the way down the Spellshot tree, grabbing the Sever the Thread capstone, and then going into the Brr-Zerker tree for the frost increases and survivability. I'm not going to linger on our skills too much because they're pretty straightforward at this point, but in our Spellshot tree we go for all the gun damage skills like magic bullets, 1 slot, 1 kill, and imbued weapon. This will make our gun damage pretty ridiculous, and even though we are focused on frost guns, you can pretty much use any weapon. High thread count is a must-have for any Spellshot build, increasing our spell weaving stacks, which increases our damage overall, and then we grab the capstone so we can spam spells as often as possible regardless of cooldown. We also have glass cannon but not mage armor. This is because I'm using the cursed wit, so I want my shield down at all times for the extra damage. I also used a body rune and had it work well, but I preferred the damage output of the wit. If you do end up using the body rune, I would take 1 point out of Blood Frenzy and put it into unarmored defense for the extra HP, and the rune should make up for the loss of HP gain. Which brings me to the Brr-Zerker tree. We grab Ancestral Frost, the Old Ways, and Icebreaker, so when we're up close and enemies are slowed, they take more damage. And lastly, I have 2 points in Cold Snap for the extra frost efficiency, which helps us freeze things a little easier. 2 points into Blood Frenzy, unless you're using body rune, then 1 point in Blood Frenzy and 1 point in unarmored defense. But Blood Frenzy for life gain and to keep our rage going, and then Relentless Rage, so when you go into save your soul, you have all the time you need to get back up. For our action skill, I was using Feral Surge. Now, truth be told, Polymorph is a better action skill for most situations. Feral Surge does an absolutely pathetic amount of damage, and quite frankly, its ability to auto-kill enemies under 20% HP doesn't make much sense with the Brr-Zerker class to begin with. A good chunk of your damage as Brr-Zerker comes from the bonus frost we get when we're in rage, and the only way to activate rage is to use our action skills. So using Feral Surge to finish off enemies when you want rage going before you shoot enemies is a strange antithesis of the Brr-Zerker's gameplay loop. This is way off topic, and I actually wrote up a video talking about how bad Brr-Zerker's action skills are, so I might end up coming out with that soon. But back on topic, I'm using Feral Surge mostly to activate rage and to cover distance. Because we want to be close to enemies and we have next to no movement speed in this build, using Feral Surge to close the gap between enemies or even get out of sticky situations was actually really nice. And then because we're using the Thurge, the Urge, while spamming spells, our action skill comes back reasonably fast. For our hero skills, I maxed out Strength for crit damage and Intelligence for spell cooldown. You probably don't need the Intelligence, but I felt like it was helping me, so if you don't want Intelligence, I would go for Dexterity instead for the crit chance. So that's it for skills, and now on to the gear. I already mentioned our wards. You can use either the Cursed Wit or the Body Rune, and in the beginning I mentioned our rings and amulet. I have 2 class rings, which get a 50% increase when our action skill is cooling down, and then the Urge amulet, which increases spell damage when our action skill is cooling down. So the fact that we aren't resetting Feral Surge by killing stuff is actually helping us out quite a bit. For our armor, I was using an Amalgam. This has pretty good bonuses on it, but I was mostly using it for the extra point in high thread count. More spell waving stacks means more spell damage and more gun damage, so high thread count is such a good skill to have on an armor. And now on to weapons and our spells. For weapons, anything Frost does well, but the best ones I used was the Queen's Cry, which spawns meteors when you get crits, the Borea's Breath, and I had the ×4 Dahlia Frost SMG. I prefer Dahlia for the reload speed personally, but any one of these Frost 4 pellet SMGs will work. I also used the Last Rites Hyperius shotgun for a little bit. This comes from a side mission called 20,000 Years Under the Sea in Wartooth Shallows. This gun's pellets can sometimes ricochet into other enemies, and it deals a decent amount of damage to weaker groups of mobs, but it can't roll with an enchantment, so I didn't use it too much. You can also use the liquid cooling. I opted to avoid it this time because of how unbelievable the damage output it had with this setup. I was hitting 13k crits or something like that with my spell weaving stacks and other bonuses, so it's insane and I didn't want to crutch on it. And for our spells, I started off using the Burgeoning Impaling Ice Spike, but in the middle of testing they pushed a hotfix that stopped it from hitting twice, effectively cutting its damage in half. Now this Ice Spike is still one of the hardest hitting spells in the game, and it's great for burst damage against single targets and bosses, but I eventually settled on the Glacial Cascade. This can very easily hit multiple enemies at a time and does a really good damage. I would just look for one with multiple charges so you can spam them more often. And for our enchants, we have nothing special, just focus on frost damage, spell damage, and damage dealt. I had a lot of fun with this build, slamming, spamming spells and bullets and repeating until everything was dead. Now you won't be speed killing bosses with this, but you're not going to struggle with them either. For what it lacks in boss melting, it more than makes up for in mobbing with how quickly you can freeze stuff, and it makes short work of tankier enemies like the trolls, breachers, and titan teeth. Anyway, If you like this build and want to give it a shot, the save file will be on my Discord, link in the description. Consider subscribing and hitting that bell if you want to see more builds like this, gear guides, and other fun ideas, and check out my Twitter and TikTok for the ramblings of my smooth ADHD-fueled brain. Till next time, have a good one. Get out of the puddle. No. Stop. Stop walking. Stop walking away. I accidentally picked up a sniper.
Put that ancient crossbow and stick it up your ass. That's actually what it is. I'm gonna be.
No, I don't know what it is. I don't know where my SMG went.